Saluti a tutti and welcome to this episode of Ciao DMV, Italian American Life in the DMV. My name is Joseph Barrow and I will be your host. This podcast channel is dedicated to all things Italian and Italian American in the DMV, aka DC, Maryland, and Virginia. My focus is on the Italian American experience, from family stories to little known history to businesses to cultural events. Today, I am pleased to share with you an interview with a young lady who was interested on being on this podcast. Giorgia Barrow is a high school senior right here in the DMV who talks about her latest trip to Italy to visit her Nonna and her future plans. Take a moment and have a listen to the youngest Italian American to be on my podcast. So, welcome, Giorgia. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for being on my podcast. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So, why don't we begin with the most basic question that I ask everyone who appears on my podcast is, where does your family originate in Italy?
My family originates from kind of the northern area. Um, we live in Milano, so kind of near that area. We really live in a small town called Cornier,
Okay.
but our biggest towns are like Milano and Torino.
And that's fine. It's okay. My family comes from a large city. My mother's side, the city of Ragusa, and my father comes from a much smaller town of 6,000, Militello and Val di Catania. So we know you have relatives there, and do you keep in touch often with them?
I'm not really a big phone person, but I do try to keep in touch with them. When I was younger, I used to go over there every summer, which is kind of how I gained my fluency in Italian.
And my understanding is you were just there recently. Is that correct?
Yes, for spring break, I was able to see them.
Excellent. So how long were you there for?
I was there for 2 weeks.
Okay. And tell me a little bit about your visit there. Tell me about what were some of the experience you had, the things that you really, really like, and even one or two things you didn't like, but that's okay.
Obviously, I love seeing my family. It's always so great to see them. There's obviously sometimes where we'll butt heads a little bit, especially because it's like a small town, so there's not much space to kind of expand and have your own time. But it was so nostalgic being back, especially near the warmer weather. It really reminded me of when I used to go when I was younger. And I was able to spend a lot of my time with my grandmother, just learn her cooking, kind of try to be a better cook myself.
So tell me about cooking. And my understanding is that's one of your hobbies.
Yeah, I really enjoy baking, but I've been trying to get better at cooking because, I'm getting ready to go to college. So the next step after that is to have my own place. And so I want to make sure that I'm kind of grounded enough in my cooking to where I feel comfortable to make myself dinner almost every night.
So what let's focus on the baking first, and we'll talk about the meals. So what do you like to bake? Do you have a favorite thing that, this I really love to do this?
I've got to say, I really love to make cookies. They're one of the harder things to make, especially if you're trying to get like the perfect consistency where it's crunchy on the edges and soft on the inside. So I've just been like kind of going over those recipes, but I especially also love to make crostata, which my grandma taught me, and obviously other things like brownies and cakes is really fun to make too.
So for our listeners who don't know, what is crostada?
So it's like a rustic kind of sweet pie. And basically, the way that my grandma makes it, you have four walls that kind of hold in the jam. And then on top, you have like a checkered pattern that allows the sweetness of the jam and the balance of the dough to kind of give you like a sweet dessert, but not too much of like a sweet dessert. and then you tend to eat it while having like your cafe, or even just una tisana later in the night.
And do you have a favorite jam you like to use? Is there a traditional one and one that and is it the same one that you like to use?
So we traditionally do a jam that is like strawberry, and I can't enjoy it any other way, so I always do strawberry. Even though sometimes I'll try to switch it up, strawberry is always the best way.
Hmm. Well, good. And how about for meal prep? Did you learn anything new? Do you have a favorite dish that you like to prepare?
This time around, I just helped out with making the lasagna, which is always like a really good thing because she makes her pasta from scratch. But this time I also learned how to make my favorite dish, which is pasta con pesce. And so I'm keeping that recipe in my back pocket, and I'm getting ready to, make it whenever I crave it. That way I don't have to wait until I go back to Italy.
Okay, excellent, excellent. And any other dishes that you really like to make other than lasagna and the pesce? Any others?
I also really love to make gnocchi. It's really fun to do the pasta by hand, especially because she doesn't do potato gnocchi. She does the pasta. So you kind of smush the dough under your finger, and you pull it down, and then to release it and move it away from you, you kind of like kick it out with your finger. So it's really like it's a fun action to do.
I used to help my mother do that when I was younger, but we used the edge of a spoon. She liked to use the edge of the spoon. She said it
Mm,
was easier on her fingers.
yeah.
So, well, let's move away and tell us a little bit about yourself here in the US. Where do you go to school?
So currently I'm a senior at Duke Ellington School of the Arts in Museum Studies.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more about why did you choose Duke Ellington? Was it because of the museum studies? Was it for some other reason and then eventually you got into that?
So yeah, originally I chose Duke because where I was at school, I didn't feel like there was enough opportunity to really push me into like a college that was willing to give me a lot of money. And Duke had a lot of notoriety, so I was very confident that if I worked hard in a place like Duke, I would able to get a lot of money for college. Um, and when applying, I didn't really know what department to choose because I felt like I didn't really fit into just one of them. So I tried out for museum studies in camp, and I got rejected from camp, but I got accepted into museum studies. And from there, I've really just been putting my best foot forward. And through my experience at museum studies, I've been able to kind of understand that I love being in the art sphere, but I don't want to per se be an artist. Like, I don't want that to be my only job. So, museum studies has allowed me to kind of make that transition from not just being an artist, but being able to be an arts administrator. So, I still support and I help create the art, but I'm not the only one that's creating it. Like, I'm behind an institution.
All right, so let's take a step back for our listeners about museum studies. Let's go a little bit more into it. What does museum studies involve? You've kind of alluded a little bit to it about kind of being behind the scenes, that you're not the artist, but give my listeners a little bit more of a description because I don't think most people, when they think about it, they go to a museum, they don't really think about all of the jobs that go into it. So talk a little bit more about that for our listeners.
Well, museum studies is a very vast job. You obviously have the job of the artist, but you also have the job of the curator. So the person who puts the pieces together, makes them flow a specific way. You have the archival kind of sphere, which is people who ensure that the paintings are properly packaged so that when in transportation they don't get damaged, and if they do over time that the art is fixed. And then you also have obviously our museum educators, which are the people that create um,
like the descriptions that you see for every piece of art or whatever the case might be?
Yeah, kind of, but they also help like when students come in, they help create educational adventures or like a specific activity for schools.
Okay. Okay. So so you're in this program now, but and where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years in relation to this program?
Um, while I love museum studies, I see myself more in like a theater administration. Um, like I mentioned with you, I attended Woolly Mammoth um like in their internship program through BAI, and I really fell in love with being in the theater space. And so from there, I think I would prefer to stay in the theater space. But obviously, if I can, I would want to do like some kind of community development with like either a theater space or a museum space.
So are you looking when you graduate Duke Ellington to going further on for your bachelor's degree in some sort of theater administration?
Um, really, I want to stay more fluid. So I'm gonna get a degree in psychology. That way, if need be, I can also work in like an office space, not just arts administration, but also just business administration.
And the only reason I asked that is a number of years ago when my daughter was looking to go to colleges. We went to NYU and did a tour, and they offer a whole program on theater administration. Everything
Mm.
you need to know about behind the scenes in theater if you don't want to be the person out in the front. So, good. Well, tell me a little bit about Woolly Mammoth. What is Woolly Mammoth Theater? Because I know there are going to be people who listen to this podcast who are not from the area, who have no clue about Woolly Mammoth. What is the Woolly Mammoth Theater, and what did you do there?
So Woolly Mammoth is a small theater in the Penn Quarter area of Chinatown. It puts on a lot of its own productions. So a lot of the productions that go on have been written by writers that have partnered with Woolly Mammoth, and they've taken the writing and they've pushed it all the way to being an actual thing that you can see on the stage. While I was there at Woolly, my main job was I was in the community. Oh, what was it called? I'm forgetting the actual name, but my main job was to engage our community with the theater.
Okay.
So, for instance, one of the shows that we had going on, my main job was to email moms saying, "Hey, we have a new show that's targeted towards moms. We also are putting out this program where you can bring your kid in for like an additional $15, and we'll engage them in activities while you enjoy the show, so you don't have to hire a babysitter and you can make sure that your young one is with you." So really just reaching out to the community and kind of bringing them in to enjoy our shows.
And I'm just curious, how successful do you think you were in doing that?
I think I sent out about 20 emails and I had like 10 people respond back to me. So I thought I was relatively successful.
Well, actually it's a pretty good ratio return, considering most of the times you'll send out 100, and if you get three or four, you're lucky in
Yeah.
responses. Well, that's great. But my understanding is you also were at another place. I think it's called uh, museum in the mansion. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about what it is and what did you do there?
So while at the O Museum or Museum in the
Oh,
Mansion, I was really like a flexible intern. So if they ever needed me for any events, they would tend to just put me in the ball game and I would help out. If not, I was the person that was answering the door, checking people in, obviously answering any questions along the way. But yeah, I was just kind of a flexible third party that if they ever needed me anywhere, I could assist with anything. Um, and it was a really great experience being able to work in like a hospitality setting because with Woolly Mammoth, I was on the upper half of because they have it separated. So the lower half is where the theater is, and the upper half is where the office is. And because I was an office worker, I didn't really interact with the public that much. So now having the experience of working with the O Museum and being able to interact with the public a lot more, it was a very interesting change and a very welcoming development.
And thinking about those two experiences, if you had to say what's the one key lesson you learned, I know I'm putting you on the spot probably then, but what's the one key thing that you learned from those experiences?
Uh, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. I think for both experiences, I really had to make sure that my voice was heard and that I was expressing what I wanted and what I thought could be improved upon. Because when you're an intern, you're a little more hesitant because you don't have a permanent position. But I felt like if they're asking your opinion, so if you don't say what you need to say, if you don't ask for more, then you obviously can't receive as many of the benefits from making sure you put yourself out there and saying.
Okay. And and I'm gonna shift gears just a little bit. You're coming to the end of the school year now,
Mm-hmm.
for you. When does the school year end for you?
June 5th.
It's literally right around the corner. So for those who are listeners, we've recorded this episode at the very end of May. I know it's a few weeks between the time I've recorded this and it's published. And what are your plans for the summer?
Me and my father are going to Japan and Korea for my senior trip. And then after that, I'll be working for the rest of the summer and hopefully hanging out with my friends as much as I can. Just kind of enjoying my last couple months in DC.
Okay. Okay. And then after that, where to? You said the last couple of months in DC, and after that?
After that, me and my dad are going to drive to Washington State so I can go ahead and attend my college, which is Washington State University.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. So, Georgia, thank you so much for being on this podcast. It's been greatly appreciated. And hopefully, my listeners have learned a little bit something about you.
Thank you. It was so lovely to be on here.
Excellent. Thank you.
I hope that you have enjoyed this episode with Giorgia Barrow. And before I continue, I do want to wish her the best as she heads off to college. And who knows, maybe we'll do a follow up episode in a few years to catch up on how her life has changed, evolved since this interview. If you're interested on being on this podcast, please feel free to contact me at ciaodmv@gmail.com. That's ciaodmv@gmail.com. And please remember, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, please take a moment to like, comment, subscribe, and or share with a friend. This is Joseph Barone, your host, signing out. Ciao, DMV.